And the first tour I went to was the Huntington Gallery in Pasadena. And at one point, we came upon this bust of a woman and stopped to spend time with this and really look at it. My first impression of it was, it's a representation of a woman that I don't think is all that attractive. So it was just empty to me. Her face wasn't even compelling to me, so that was the end of it, basically. And had I been there alone, I probably would have glanced at it and walked on looking for something that was more intriguing to me. But Mr. Travers had us stop, had us look, had us observe, had us notice, had us put together things, just like we do in literature. Fascinating. I never realized that this was something you could do in the visual arts as well as in literature. He had us do an analysis that was very much like the experience I was used to from literature. And I'm not going to go into the details of that analysis because you're about to experience it with Mr. Travers yourself. But I'll just tell you the effect of it. When we were done, it was breathtaking to me, beautiful, and it represented a specific moment. It wasn't just a bust of a woman. It was a representation, a portrait of a woman having a certain experience, an experience that I could relate to, and that I could then I could relate to her expression and connect it to similar experiences in my own life. And after that, it was just beautiful to me. And I couldn't believe that that was all there in this bust. And on first looking at it, it meant nothing to me. So among other things, I learned that there's a process that you have to go through in order to derive the value out of a work of the visual arts, just as you do with literature. And Mr. Travers is teaching that process to your children. Similarly, just this weekend, I was in New York City, just this past week, and my mother, who had heard me glow about Mr. Travers' art appreciation class on repeated occasions, said, why don't you take us to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and show us this method? So I said, absolutely. And the painting that I chose was of Joan of Arc. And I brought them before this painting, and my mother's initial reaction was very similar to mine with the bust. Well, not with the bust, but with art that I responded positively to in general. It's pretty. Her face is interesting. The setting is nice. And she liked it. She had a positive response to it. Then I took her through the process. And the only vocabulary I have for describing the experience was, it was like I could sense her heart swell as she went through this process. Because by the end of it, this painting was so meaningful to her. Now, thereafter, anytime she would mention it or think about it, there was almost a gasp in her voice because it was now so beautiful to her. And I think she wants to own it now. She wants to have a poster of it in her house because it now has so much meaning. And so I got to witness that transformation all again with her. Today I will, I hope, with you too. So, one thing I wanted to share with you quickly before we let Mr. Travers take over is, so what is the net result of all this with the kids? They experience this with literature. They experience this with the visual arts. How do we see this impact the children? And the best way I have of relating that to you is through the sonnets that some of the junior high students just wrote for me. So what happened was I wanted the kids to have some experience writing poetry. And the sonnet form is a very definite, structured form. And I had lots of beautiful examples to share with them. So I thought, I'll have them write a sonnet. So I taught them the form. I gave them some examples of my favorite sonnets, Shakespeare, Spenser, Edna St. Vincent Millay. We briefly looked at those. This was really the course of a period, one school period, that I introduced this to them. And then I set them free. And the only parameters I gave them were, it must follow the sonnet form. You have to choose one of the rhyming patterns and all the syllable patterns you have to follow. And the theme, and the topic, the theme, has to be grand in stature, because sonnets are serious. They take on grand themes like love. So that's what I told them. And I just want to share with you a couple of the results that I got. So the first is about Beowulf. Into his horrid face he calmly gazed, bravely and sternly with those milky eyes. Unblinking, unamused, and unamazed, the monster soon to meet his sure demise. The hero's wrists were strong, his eyes near blind. The demon Grendel could not help but fear this man who paid his inner evil mind, and thus could vanquish monsters far and near. This hero's virtue so defied its night, but the monster, dark and hateful, would not fall. The hero still held on with all his might, and vanquished the demon once and for all. Rejoicing came with the morning sun, for Beowulf and light and good had won. The second that I want to share with you, the child chose the subject of Penelope from the story of Odysseus. It's so quiet near the end of the day, when golden sand is shining in the sun, and his ship is sailing so far away, glad that its long voyage has now begun. The queen is hesitant to even move. Her clear emerald eyes are full of tears. She is aware, but she cannot approve of what can happen after all these years. Will she withstand her dear husband's absence while locked away in her own quiet room, or spending many hours in sad silence, unweaving the shroud on her wooden loom? Whatever happens, I will ask no more, she quietly said as she left the shore. Okay, this one is based on the first scene from '93, and in this scene, a mother and her children are in the woods by themselves. And these woods are the scene of many battles. So Victor Hugo contrasts the beauty and peacefulness of these woods with the danger that they hold. There are ambushes lurking behind every tree. So that's what she chose to represent. Fresh bloomed flowers are strewn about the ground. Glimpses of the canopied sky are blue. Birds in the trees sing with a cheery sound, for winter's gone and spring is fresh and new. But we are in the woods of La Saudre, and we won't be fooled by this seeming peace. This terrible forest is where men slay. This white and blue battle may never cease. The bark of the trees is stained dark blood red. These stealthy woods teem with the air of war. Our pounding hearts are filled with only dread. If we are ambushed, we could be no more. Although these woods have found sweet springtime's breath, they hold the wicked air of shadowed death. You know, I just have to tell you that when I received these sonnets, I was stunned. I'll share with you, one of the parents of one of these poems that I just read to you said, "That was in my daughter's head? I had no idea." And I felt the same way. On the one hand, I could not believe that this is what came out of them. I think it took them 2 periods to write them. On the other hand, this is what the art curriculum has given them. So that's Penelope's story, and I believe they did Penelope in Art Appreciation this year. That means something to them. That opening scene in '93, that means so much to them. These characters have really spoken to them, and they can understand them on an abstract level. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Travers and give you a glimpse of how that goal is achieved.